Good morning, everyone. Welcome. It is FPC Radio Live. It is Monday morning, John. The Lakers and the Celtics are combined 0 for 6. 0 and 6. 0 for 6. 0 for whatever. 0 and 6 in the conference finals. How did we get here, John? I really look. You in particular are 0 and 6 because you're a LeBron fan, obviously, and then you have some rooting interest, obviously, for the Celtics. How did we get to this point? Because I mean, I woke up this morning and I was like, man, I thought maybe that was just a nightmare, and no, it was real. It was real.
A week ago, we were sitting on the Celtics winning Game 7 against Philadelphia, the Lakers beating Golden State, and we're talking about Celtics-Lakers Part 13, right?
Mm-hmm.
With LeBron coming in with the Lakers on June 1st at TD Garden and how ABC was going to be so thrilled with that. Well, yada, yada, yada. Here we are a week later, and the Lakers, look, they're playing a better team. I think that's pretty obvious. The only way the Lakers were going to win that series was LeBron and Anthony Davis were going to have to play at a maximum level every game, and they haven't. At least they've been somewhat competitive, though. Those games have been close in the fourth quarter at some point. The Celtics is a totally different thing. I mean, Everyone is in agreement that they have more talent than Miami, but, you got Caleb Martin outscoring Jaylen Brown in this series.
Yeah.
That's just a head scratcher. And then I still felt confident they could win Game 3 in Miami because they play better on the road than they do at home. And then they just get mollywopped last night by the Heat. And, now you're wondering what's going to happen in the offseason with really both teams, but even more so the Celtics because, they've got really great young players. They should be the team to step up and win a championship, and they just were a no-show last night.
Yeah, last night was particularly bad. I mean, losing a close game, that's one thing, but, there was a obvious lack of effort. And I know, look, it's Monday post that debacle. It's overreaction Monday. Generally, that's reserved for football because of how obviously the schedule works. But today, it's basketball, and obviously specifically Celtics fans. But I think there is, fans have a right to be frustrated with the team. And yeah, is the frustration misguided at points? Yeah, absolutely. I mean, sometimes people have no idea what to be pissed off about. And that's kind of a bad thing because there's a lot of things to be pissed off about if you're a Celtics fan right now. And, to just get embarrassed like that in an important game. Now, look, yes, the series isn't over. Could they go out and win 4 in a row? Sure. They did that against Jimmy Butler when he was with the Bulls, if I'm not mistaken. But you're going to have to do what the Red Sox did, and that is become the first team to come back from a 3-0 deficit in NBA playoff history, which, look, it's not impossible. I mean, again, eventually things like this are going to happen. But you're not seeing too many things you can kind of fall back on. They've blown 2 double-digit leads in Game 1 and Game 2 in the fourth quarter. They weren't even competitive for much of the second half last night. So there's really just nothing that gives you confidence that they can really string together 3-4 wins, let alone, or 1 or 2 wins, let alone 3 or 4, which is what they're going to need to make this a competitive series. So it's look, there's a lot of blame to go around. I don't think any of us expected Joe Mazzulla to come in and coach to the level of Eric Spoelstra, but he's been coached circles around and then some. This team looks pretty much the same as what it's looked the last several trips to the conference finals and last year into the finals. I don't know if it has something to do with the fact that they've had 3 different head coaches the last 3 years. I mean, I understand the reasonings why the moves were made. But, John, you can't tell me that continuity the lack of continuity at that head coaching position isn't an issue. Now, that's not the full reason why this team has struggled. There's a lot of accountability to be had amongst the players themselves. But 3 different messages in 3 different years, 3 years in a row. I mean, that's kind of when you step back and say, wow, well, they've made 3 pretty nice runs in spite of that. Well, it's impressive, but at the same time, it's stunting their growth.
Well, I think I would blame it more on the players because the issues the players have had were there with Brad Stevens, Ime Udoka, and now with Joe Mazzulla. So they're not getting it, obviously. And we know that the NBA is a players' league, not necessarily a coaches' league. It gets a little bit more intricate when you get to the postseason. Look, in the regular season, you're home on a Tuesday night, you're on the road Wednesday and Friday, you're playing a team once, you're flying in, they may be load managing. The talent just overwhelms the other team, and all of a sudden you've won 3 in a row. In the playoffs, these teams know more and more about each other in terms of scouting and repetition and matchups and all of that. So coaching does factor into it. But, I mean, obviously this is a guy that wasn't prepared for the job. He's flying by the seat of his pants. And also, when you look at it, Will Hardy would have got this job if, you know, the Ime Udoka story had broke earlier. He goes to Utah, does a really good job with the Jazz, who are trying to tank, and he gets them into at least a play-in. Then Damon Stoudemire leaves 3/4 of the way in the season to become the head coach at Georgia Tech. They didn't replace either of those assistants. I mean, I'm not trying to make excuses for Joe Mazzulla, but normally when you have a 34-year-old head coach, you have an assistant or 2 assistants that have experience. You know, the consigliere that sits next to him and kind of guides him through this. He
Eric
doesn't even have that.
When he first took over. I mean, now you can't get much better than Pat Riley as that person, but, you know.
Right. Yep, exactly. And Pat Riley. And you know what the interesting thing about the Heat is they're almost like constructed like a football team. Like Pat Riley's Bill Belichick, Bill Parcells. Like he's looming over the entire franchise. He doesn't even have to answer to anybody except the owner, and the owner lets him do what he wants to do. And then you got Spoelstra, who's the best coach in the league. And Jimmy Butler kind of has the feel of a quarterback. Like he kind of sells their message to the rest of the team. And there's no question who the best player on that team is. The Celtics, it's like a bunch of guys that are solo acts, right? Independent contractors. Like Jason Tatum's worried about potato chips and sneakers and being first team All NBA and NBA 2K ratings. And Jaylen Brown appears to be annoyed by anything and seems to dislike half of his teammates. And Marcus Smart thinks he's the real leader. After a while, it's like, guys, you know, pull together and try to win something before you carry yourself like multiple-time champions. I mean, they haven't won anything. And they kind of act like they have, which is, you know, kind of a turnoff, to be honest with you.
Well, look, I obviously I don't want to get premature here because, again, I mean, technically, they could go out and win 4 games in a row, and we'll be talking about this as the greatest comeback in NBA history, more so than, you know, maybe your 3-1 comeback. We'll say that could be up for discussion, but again, I'm getting far ahead of myself there. But look, I mean, it's going to be, despite what ESPN's metrics and analytics say. I mean, if there's any case for how stupid and silly some of these metrics and analytics are, they still have the Celtics in favorable percentage to win the series. That's silly. So, but there is you said it. This team has had a nice amount of success, but I mean, there comes a certain point where maybe you have to take a hard look at the and I'm not talking about trading and blowing up the whole thing, but talking about maybe reforming the foundation a little bit. And maybe that means Marcus Smart is the odd man out, because when it comes to logic, or Jaylen Brown's the odd man out. I'm not advocating for one or the other. I'm just saying these are questions that are going to naturally come up in the offseason, especially after, you know, if they get swept or if it's a gentleman's sweep, you know, 4-1, either way, these things are going to be big questions. And the reality of it is, John, unless they somehow force a game 7, I don't think the narrative is going to change much from here on out, because they got to show some sort of fight these last 1, 2, 3 games, 4 games, maybe. And I don't know if they can do it right now. And by the looks of it last night, they were already defeated. So I don't know. This team is going to be built around Jason Tatum. There's no doubt about it. Jaylen Brown's future with the franchise, who knows what's going to happen there. Maybe it is best to move on from him and find another, just something else. I mean, I don't know, John. I don't pretend to sit here and know a lot about basketball. And I'm trying to look at it from a very practical manner. But like when you go to, 5 conference championships, you go to 1 NBA final, winning no championships, and generally being knocked out in the same fashion each and every year, something's got to change. something has to change. And I'm not talking about just adding a depth player, but something has to change.
They sound a little bit like the Green Bay Packers of the last 10 years, right? Great
Yeah.
regular seasons, get to the conference finals, conference championship game, and disappoint, right? And they lose at home. I mean, the Packers have lost 3 times at home, actually 4 times at home in the last 10 years. They were eliminated at Lambeau Field. Here's the Celtics, who were below 500 the last 2 years at home. They're winning all these accolades. Rodgers is winning MVPs, and Jason Tatum's first team All NBA, and Jaylen Brown second team All NBA, Brogdon sixth man of the year, and it sounds great, right? It sounds like a movie poster. Like, come watch this team; they've got everything, and then they, get outperformed by the Miami Heat with undrafted free agents. The thing is, to maintain Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum on this team is going to cost the Celtics $120 million per year for the next 5 years. That's an awful lot of money. So obviously your depth isn't going to be as good. You're going to have to move on from whether it's Marcus Smart or Grant Williams or Al Horford or whoever. I don't know. So that becomes problematic. I mean, one thing that I'd toss out there is if you're going to move on from Jaylen Brown, you can't go trade him for draft picks because that's useless at this point.
Yeah.
I would think maybe to Portland for Damian Lillard. Certainly that would shake it up. Lillard's older, but he's been a good postseason performer. That could be something. I mean, I maybe throw that out there as a rumor, but who knows? I mean, because it's going to cost you a lot of money to keep Tatum and Brown together here.
Well, and that's the thing too. This isn't a team that is on the cusp of getting down to the bottom of the conference. They can still be competitive. They can roll out exactly what they have this year and probably get one of the top few seeds next year. And we'd be talking about the same thing, a possible conference finals appearance, or who knows? I mean, they could do that, but I think again, I mean, we've seen this too many times, over and over and over again, and I can't imagine that all of a sudden things are going to be different next year. And look, let's be honest. I mean, Miami went out and took. I mean, they handled Milwaukee. They took care of business with the Knicks, and so they're playing great basketball right now. So it's not all on the Celtics, but it's just it's hard to look past getting blown out. It's hard to look past blowing 10+ point leads late in the game, and it might be that, yeah, maybe a big change needs to happen. Maybe they need to, and again, I'm throwing names out there. I'm not advocating for anything, but maybe they need to get away from the Marcus Smart era. And I'm not putting all the blame on him, but you know what I'm saying? Like maybe that attitude might need to go elsewhere and kind of reshape. And again, this is not trying to shift blame to one player or the other. It's just the makeup of this team has to change somehow, I think, for them to take the next step. And, in order to attack that or address that, maybe you go to one of the more vocal, quote unquote, leaders. You said it earlier. He calls him, or he thinks he's the leader of this team. And maybe that's a problem, John. Maybe that's a problem.
I've never been a big Marcus Smart fan.
I like Marcus Smart. I do. Yeah. But.
Yeah, I mean, people do. I don't. I like food. I like, guys that are uber talented. You know that. You know all my favorite athletes. He could play a role on a team, but he's got to understand that role. When he decides he's the equal of Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, that's when there's a problem. And he kind of carries himself that way. He's been here longer than any other player. The organization loves him. And from what I understand, there is nobody better in the city of Boston dealing with charities. When he goes to these events, he's engaged with people. He's a personality. That's all well and good, but we're talking about basketball here, and if he can help deliver a championship for the Boston Celtics. So that's really where the problem lies. And yeah, I think I would move on from him. But if you're talking about a team that lacks grit, do you go get rid of maybe your grittiest player and another guy like Grant Williams, who at least was willing to stand up to Jimmy Butler? I mean, are those the two guys that go? And now you've really got a bunch of laconic guys. Tatum, Brown, Horford, Brogdon, Derek White. I mean, you'd have the quietest team in the league in terms of being boisterous. I don't know what goes on behind closed doors, but yeah, I mean, I would move on. You have to shake things up. You just can't roll back with the same thing. Heck, teams win championships and don't come back with the same exact roster. How can you get swept by Miami in the conference finals in embarrassing fashion and say, you know what, we're just going to run it back next year because we had a bad week against the Miami Heat? No, that is not normally how it's done.
Yeah, and that's exactly it. This isn't just an overreaction after one, underperforming or postseason or whatever. This is a pattern. This is something we've seen each and every year. It's Groundhog's Day, you know, how they
Yep.
play in the playoffs, and that doesn't mean they can't be successful against the Atlanta Hawks of the world, or the Philadelphia 76ers, who haven't gotten to the conference final in over 21 or over 20 years. So, um, yeah, it's look, if they can't pull off this miraculous comeback, or at least at the very least, and I say very least, that it's still a monumental task. Be competitive for the next few games if you can keep it competitive, and by that I mean like really show something, John, and maybe that'll be fool's gold, and maybe that'll be in the long run bad, because maybe the organization will say, well, no, see, they can do it. Well, no, they did it for a couple of games when they had nothing to lose. Well, except the series, I guess. But you know what I mean. They're, at that point,
Yep.
you're down 3-0. Maybe Miami plays a little bit looser, and you take advantage of that. I'm not buying that as hope for the future, but maybe the organization does. So maybe your best hope at this point, John, if you're a Celtics fan and you really want to see them take the next step, maybe they just need to get not blown out like they did last time, but I mean, maybe just end it. You know what I mean? Just get the sweep, make the sweep, because the sweep would look so much worse. And again, I'm not rooting for that, but like if you want to see change in this organization, and I'm not talking about ridiculous trade Jason Tatum, trade this, blow this up. No, something does need to change with this team. You cannot roll back the same exact team that has failed to get over the hump for the last 5-6 years. Maybe you
Maybe
need
something
this
to do
loss.
with the building. Maybe it's something to do with the building. I mean, because look, it sounds like we're talking about the Bruins at some point.
Yeah,
Although
I mean,
the
seriously.
Bruins lost after a 3-1 lead. Two of the games were in overtime, and the other one they had leads in. So but look at the Bruins went 1-3 at the Garden in the postseason, and the Celtics are 2-5 in their last 7 home games at TD Garden. So maybe Kyrie Irving has to come in as a friend of the Celtics, not as a player, and stage the entire building to get those bad spirits away, and because neither team has any sort of home court or home ice advantage in the postseason. We've seen this for years.
Yeah, and it's frustrating, and both teams have not the same issues, but similar repetitive issues. Each that's the crazy thing about these two winter teams, is they've had so much success, regular season success. They've had playoff success. I mean, no one's saying that they're one and done bums, but they seem to revert back to this frustrating with the Bruins all of a sudden. Well, in this, it was a little bit different for the Bruins this year, because in years past they all of a sudden lack scoring, and they wilt under pressure, and in a way they did this year as well. But in this case, their defense broke down. The Celtics, each and every year, same thing. They had these bad quarters. They looked disjointed. I mean, there were times they were just standing around flat-footed on defense. I'm talking like second quarter, when the game was like, still within grasp, and Miami was just toying with them. Like they'd never played team defense before. And I'm like sitting here thinking, like, Jesus, it's May. You're the number 2 seed in the conference final, and you're looking like you're playing a pickup game at the Y or something. So,
Who's responsible for all of this? And I'm going to stroke you here, Tom Brady.
Because yes, I agree.
Brady was here for 20 years. The region won 12 championships. He was responsible for 6 of them, right? So he leaves. Since he's left, no championship. He goes to Tampa, wins a championship on his own. The Lightning win back-to-back Stanley Cups. The Rays go to a World Series and are on pace to win 116 games this year. He retires, right? You know where his primary residence
Miami.
is now?
I'm putting money down on the Dolphins. You kidding me?
Oh, without question. The Marlins are going to turn it around in the National
John, it goes beyond that. Even when he was in college at Michigan, Detroit, back-to-back Stanley Cup championships.
Michigan's won 1 national championship in college football, like in my lifetime, and it was the year Brady was a sophomore. I don't even think he played much, but he was still there. Oh, by the way, he's minority owner of the Vegas Aces of the WNBA. They're considered the favorite along with the New York Liberty to win that league. So just bring him into an organization, or just have him stay, I don't know, like
Well,
30 days a year in your area, and you're guaranteed of winning something.
It's remarkable, John. I remember thinking about like it's really obviously it's a coincidence, right? I don't think so. Look,
No, because as a kid, the 49ers won 5 championships when he was a 49ers fan, right?
Seriously.
And, I mean,
he was at the game with the catch, you know?
Yes, exactly. I'm sure he probably would have caught the ball if he was on the field. And I know,
actually, I don't know. I don't know about that one. He has.
So he probably couldn't get up as high as Dwight Clark.
Yeah.
I don't know. Plus, he was like 5 years old at the time. But I think he also grew up as a Yankees fan, right? So I more so than a Giants fan. But either way, the Yankees have won a bunch of World Series in his lifetime, and so have the Giants. The Warriors. Maybe he's a Warriors fan. I don't know.
I don't know. Maybe there's some TB12 sage that he burns. He just wherever he goes. I don't know. But it's
ship it up to Boston.
It's almost it's remarkable that like not just like
I knew I'd put you in a good mood.
Well, you know what? I am in a good mood, and I'm glad you did this because like it's not just moderate success, John. Like you said, the Lightning went to 3 straight Stanley Cups. Every season that he was here, they went to a Stanley Cup and won twice. The Rays went to another one. It's crazy. It's and obviously the Buccaneers winning their first Super Bowl in 20 years.
And now Miami, he's got the Heat going to the NBA Finals with one more win, and the Panthers going to the Stanley Cup Final. They're up 2-0. I mean, it's kind of crazy.
I don't even know. I couldn't even tell. Look, maybe Miami's not the bet next year in the NFL. Maybe it's the Raiders. Look, if the Raiders go out and win this, you know what? There's no more argument that it's not coincidence. It's fact. Wherever he goes, people win. The city wins. The city is better. It's like, remember back in the day, it used to be like if like the Olympics come to your town, it actually is a positive thing. Or like, you know, something like that to bring like attention to your city. It brings in money. Oh, it's great. That's Tom Brady. He's like the traveling road show that just brings in so much attention to that particular area. In this case, attention being championships and success. So, yeah, I like it.
The World Cup in 2026 is coming to the United States. They'll win that.
Yeah, because of Tom Brady. Hey, look, you don't have to do much to convince me that Tom Brady is the reason for anyone's success. So, anyways, speaking of other things,
Bill Belichick and the rest of those coaches have made a lot of money off it.
Hey, a lot of people have made a lot of money off them. Speaking of things that I like, though, I do like playoff overtime in the NHL, and we're getting a lot of it, and I could not ask for anything better. Florida and we just spoke about Florida and Carolina both went to overtime in each game. Kind of butchered the English language there, so I apologize there. I had 2 thoughts in my head, and you know what I mean? You ever do that? You start one thought and then you finish it with a completely related but different thought. It you know, I kind of do that
every
sometimes.
20 minutes I do that.
That's true. It's a constant battle trying to keep you focused. But I lost my train of thought. Frank Costanza.
You were talking about overtime hockey.
Yes, right. Overtime hockey, I love it. Florida, they both gone to overtime. Vegas has won a pair of overtime games. I love it. I want more of it. I do like that a few of them have ended quickly, but now I'm ready for another marathon one. Give me another Panthers Carolina, like 3 or 4 overtime game tonight. Well, I mean, we already know what's going to happen. The Panthers are going to win, right? I've completely given up any hope that anything outside of South Florida is going to have success this winter or this spring, rather. Give me 4 overtimes, and guess what? Matthew Tkachuk is probably going to score another overtime goal. It's it does make me feel a little bit better about the Bruins' loss. But then when I think about the fact that they had this team on the ropes for much of the first part of that series and was up with 58 seconds left to go in the third period in Game 7, it just pains me when I remember that. But it's hard not to be impressed with what the Panthers are doing and how they continue to have this much. Excuse me. Sorry. Whew. I was trying so hard to get that last word out before I had to mute myself and sneeze, but it all kind of all kind of mashed together. So, if you heard a really weird grunt and noise, that's what that was. But yeah,
Or
look,
Lane would say, "You're so good looking."
yeah, you're so good looking. But yeah, so it's been a joy to watch these playoff overtimes and playoff series in the NHL.
So Florida was down 3-1 against the Bruins. Since then, they're 9-1. They've won five
Yeah.
of those games in overtime, all on the road. So talk about a team that's just on a roll right now. Bobrovsky's kind of channeling Patrick Roy in 1993 when I think the Canadians won 10 of their 16 playoff games in overtime. That's just incredible goaltending. I know
Yeah.
Bobrovsky's been up and down, but to not give up a goal in any overtime period, whether it goes 4 overtime periods or if it goes 3 minutes, that's pretty impressive. And then you got Matt Tkachuk, who's just, right now, obviously, if the Panthers win this thing, he's going to win the Conn Smythe Trophy hands down.
Well, I think, and I'm Sergei Bobrovsky's number one hater. I think he has a very good case for it, maybe even more so than Matthew Tkachuk, because since in that 9-1 stretch, he's been phenomenal. And again, I'm not one to sit there and praise him. But I mean, his numbers are, they're elite season numbers. I mean, sub 2 goals against average. I mean, save percentage in the high 900s. These are elite numbers, and he's 9-1. And there's been times where, they've really had to rely on him, and he's come up with big save after big save. So yeah, I mean, even as great as Matthew Tkachuk and as clutch as Matthew Tkachuk has been, I almost feel like if he continues, Sergei Bobrovsky, to play like he has been playing, I think he might even have the edge, because goaltending is just so important in this game, and I think he's really set the tone, and the team has kind of followed.
Yeah, maybe they'll do like in 1981 when the Dodgers beat the Yankees in the World Series and they split the MVP trophy up 3 ways.
I don't know if the NHL would do that.
Up that season. No, that summed up that season. That was the strike season where there was like 60 days of no baseball, and then they had a second half, and it was just a weird season. No, I think you just give it to one person at that point, right? And oftentimes it is a goaltender, because you're right. The way he's played has gotten them back in the series against the Bruins, and then carried on against Toronto and here against Carolina.
Yeah. It's a sad spring.
Remember we were debating about a month ago.
I know.
Should the Bruins and Celtics have a joint parade, or should they just do it independently?
So what you're saying is, my superstitious nature, it was our fault. It was our fault.
Yeah, it always is.
That seems like so long ago. I really didn't need to remember. You brought me up earlier, now you just brought me right down, John. So thank you for that.
Steven.
I appreciate it. Yeah.
You're even Steven.
Even Steven. Right.
One friend is up, one friend is down.
You were up, now you're down. I love that's a
People
good one.
must listen and go, what are these guys talking about?
But hey, look, you got to expect some sort of random Seinfeld departure from any conversation that we're having. So, but anyways, that's going to do it for us here today. Real quick before we go, who has a chance to win more games, the Lakers or the Celtics at this point?
I'm going to say the Lakers, only because they're at home, and they've kind of been there in these games. So look, even the Minnesota Timberwolves were down 3-0 in one game, forced it back to Denver. So the Celtics are quite capable of it, but they're just so far out of it that it looks like they just want to get the hell out of there. Now, the only thing is they're going to be flying back to Boston, win or lose, so that's not a factor. Oftentimes, if you're at home and you're facing elimination, like that, we really want to fly down there for Game 5, you're going to be flying home anyway. The Celtics are good enough to win a game, I know that, but I'd say they probably both end in sweeps the way it's looked, and then we have to wait like 9 days because the finals do not start till Thursday, June 1st.
Yeah, well, I was gonna say maybe for Miami, maybe they don't fly back to Boston if they lose. There's a lot of places you can go just a couple hours away, to get away from it all. So, but yeah, so I'm with you. I think both series end up in sweeps. Tonight the Lakers, and then tomorrow the Celtics. So it is what it is, John. I've mentally accepted it already. So. All right, that's going to do it. Tomorrow we will be back. We'll talk more Lakers and see if they can win, and then we'll hopefully maybe have a different tune when it comes to the Celtics. Until then, though, you're just going to have to be depressed like we are when it comes to all that. So thank you, everyone, and we will talk to you tomorrow.